Hi Vinyl Community, Jeff back for another video. This is a contest response for Robert's on my turntable. The contest is to be a push to 700 subscribers for Robert, and the last I checked I think he was well above that. He was well on his way to 750 now. But anyway, so congratulations Robert, to 700 plus and many more to come. If you're not familiar, folks, with Robert's channel, I'll link it in the description below. He has a great channel, very knowledgeable of music. Comes mostly from, as I do, classic rock background, and that is really his main focus, but quite descriptive of what he shows, and he really enjoys the vinyl community and doing videos. So if you're not familiar with Robert, I would encourage you to check out his channel and subscribe to him. So anyways, for this contest for Robert, he's having 5 questions for the contest, where he wants you to show 5 albums that were the most influential albums of your teenage years. For me, my teenage years ran from 1986 through to 1992. But even taking a few steps back before that, just to kind of preface and leading into my teenage years, I came from a family where my dad was a really big music fan, and he still is, maybe not so much anymore. But so I remember ever since I was 4, 5, 6 years old, always having music playing in the house. My dad was a classic rock guy, so it was mostly classic rock playing. And it was always really an education. And for my dad, 2 of his favorite artists were Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band and the Moody Blues. And I'm happy to say that over the years I was able to see both artists with my dad in concert, which was wonderful. Both my parents are very young, so they're both still alive. So we both still kind of feed off of each other with sort of our musical tastes and interests. So it's been a great adventure so far, musically speaking. In terms of 5 albums that were big influencers for me, however, in my teenage years, they're not really ranked. Maybe the 1 and 2 are. I'm going to kind of start backwards from 5 to 1. But one of the first biggest hard rock bands for me, which kind of course, fed off the classic rock roots that I grew up with, was Def Leppard. And when I was in high school, a close friend that I made early on in grade 9, he was a huge Def Leppard fan. In fact, he was known, I think, by most people in our grade as probably being Def Leppard's biggest fan. But he got me into these guys. I had heard of Def Leppard, but really didn't have anything or know anything about them. And this was one album that he led me on to right away. Big hits on here. I think a lot of people are familiar with Def Leppard, one of their bigger albums, of course. But Photograph, Foolin', Die Hard, The Hunter, Rock Rock Till You Drop, Rock of Ages. I think this came out in 1983 or 1984. 1983. So yeah, from a hard rock perspective, this was one of the big ones. Aerosmith was another one, but back to grade 9, Def Leppard was a pretty big one for me. So with my teenage years being in the mid-80s to the early 90s, of course, the big thing for me was CDs, and I believe I bought my first CD around 1987, and it was this album, which was essentially not my introduction to the Beatles, because my dad was a Beatles fan and I was familiar with the Beatles, but my first Beatles album that I owned was Magical Mystery Tour. This, in fact, wasn't the first media that I bought. This was the first piece, and this is the actual CD that I bought back in, I believe, 1987. Magical Mystery Tour on CD. I still have it. And if I remember correctly, this was $28 or $29 plus tax. I bought it at Kmart at a local mall here. Of course, the store is long gone, but Magical Mystery Tour was a big one for me. Again, my first Beatles album that I purchased myself, and I became quite the big Beatles fan for a number of years. So, Magical Mystery Tour. And this was a really big one, 1991. I just had to double check the year, but everybody's familiar with this one. Nevermind from Nirvana. One of, a lot of people will say the first biggest, well, the biggest, but one of the first real records that introduced grunge. And in 1991, I was, grade 12 in high school. And so, yeah, this was a really, really big album, influential on me. Through the 90s and beyond, I was a big fan of grunge and Seattle bands. I actually became a bigger Soundgarden fan than Nirvana, but in 1991, this was a massive album, and rightly so. Nevermind. So, going back to teen years and high school, my wife and I are high school sweethearts. We met in grade 10. 16 years of age, and it was in the spring of that year, and I remember that summer some friends of ours, actually a girlfriend of my then now wife, girlfriend back then, her folks had a cottage, and what became a regular occurrence a couple of times every summer for maybe 2, 3, 4 years, a bunch of friends would gather and we go up to the cottage for the weekend. And a number of my close friends really weren't music fans. I didn't have a lot of friends through high school that were big music fans. There was the odd one, and I knew a couple of guys weren't really close friends, but I knew that they were big music fans. And one of the guys that always came up to the cottage, without giving away his last name, I'll just call him Rob. And Rob always had this album, and I think it was a cassette from this band. And I don't think I'd ever heard of the Grateful Dead. My dad never had any Grateful Dead. You never hear really Grateful Dead on the radio at that point. I mean, of course, Touch of Grey became a bit of a radio hit, but never really had any Grateful Dead, never heard of the Grateful Dead. And Rob would always bring this cassette up of Dead Set. This is a double live Grateful Dead album. And he always wanted to put it on and especially play Franklin's Tower from this album. And he'd play it 2, 3 times each night that we were there on a weekend. And I just grew to love the song and eventually got the album. What became great with the Grateful Dead, and to this day sort of remains great, is that my wife, she enjoys music, but she's not really a big music fan. But if there are 2 artists that I would say of everything that I listen to that my wife appreciates, they would be Tom Petty, and even more so Grateful Dead would be number 1. She's a really big Grateful Dead fan, and we had a really close opportunity to see them, but we missed out. We went on a camping trip for a weekend, and we missed a phone call by about 20 minutes to see them in Pittsburgh. But so to this day, I've never seen them, but I love the Dead, and as does my wife. So this is a great album, great band that always brings back great memories of teen years with my wife. And I would put this at number 1, simply because as you're growing into this day, I mean, we're all constantly learning about music and new artists, and we're listening to things that we maybe have never listened to before. So over the years, I mean, you hear great artists and great albums, but this was the album that when I was a young teenager, it really changed the way of how I listened to music. Living in a house where my dad always had the stereo on, I had to listen to the headphones quite a bit because, he never really wanted the stereos competing with each other. So I started listening to headphones. And this was an album that, probably the first album that really listening from start to finish just took me away. Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd. Just a wonderful, I love it to this day, and it will always be probably regarded as the one album that really made me understand and appreciate what music could do for you, and where it can take you. So they're my five. Congratulations, Robert, once again on achieving 700 plus subscribers. Again, folks, I will link his channel below. Please check him out and subscribe him. I want to thank everybody for watching. I hope you're doing well. And until next time, bye for now.